Hello everyone and welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. Now this is going to be the Nighthaunt army video. So as I mentioned before, I'm starting a new series where I'm planning to do a lore video and an army video for every single army there is in Age of Sigmar. So hopefully that all goes well. And like I said in today's video, we're going to be looking at the Nighthaunt army. So the first things to note about the Nighthaunt army. It is a army that relies on fear, so it relies on terrifying your opponents and for you to feed off that fear. It is a army that is surprisingly fast moving. It's got great movement for a death army, and like all the other death armies, it is a durable army. Now, what do I mean by it's a durable army? So, like the other armies, it's getting that 6-up death save, which is great, but what really makes the Nighthaunt special, makes them stand out amongst even the other death armies that are extra bit more durable, is the ethereal keyword that every single war scroll in this army has got. Every single unit in this army has got the ethereal keyword, which means that they do not get affected by save modifiers. So what this means is, let's first look at the negatives. So that means that if they're in cover, they will not get plus onto their save, unfortunately. However, the much more common cause of a save modifier would be rend. So what this means is that they do not take any rend in this army. Doesn't matter if your enemies chuck in, a very sort of standard but respectable -1 rend at you, that can make a big difference, or even a -2. Or if they're chucking even a -3 at you, which basically means that writes off your save unless you're a bloody Stormcast, you're not going to care about their rend. You're just going to go, yep, that's cool, so you've got -3 rend on me. And, most of the War Scrolls in the Nighthaunt are a 4-up save, and that will basically be what your saves are across the board, 4-up. It's also easy to remember. And then we get on to the nice part of this, and this is actually probably the only army out there, maybe there's a couple of other exceptions as well, but this is one of the only armies out there that is actually benefited by the change of Mystic Shield. So Mystic Shield before 2nd edition of Age of Sigmar used to be a +1 to your save, and that's what it used to be from the start of Age of Sigmar. So that lasted for about 3 years until it got changed recently, and that made a huge difference to people's armies, made a huge difference to certain units, and could really surprisingly turn the tide of battle. However, they changed it in the 2nd edition to, instead of giving you +1 to your save, you can now reroll save rolls 1, which has downgraded it essentially from what it was. But for the Nighthaunt, who can't get +1 to their save in the same way as they can't get minuses to their save, they can get rerolls to their saves. So they can benefit hugely from Mystic Shield, especially a lot more than other armies. So this is a huge thing for this army, because like I say, if they have a 4-up save that they can't take rend to, it's always going to be a 4-up, and then you make it a 4-up reroll in 1, that's a huge difference to their durability. And like I've already said, this is a very durable army, so you've just made it that much more sort of staying power in the fight, which is, fantastic. Something to bear in mind here and reinforce why that ethereal keyword is so good is because a lot of competitive armies, not all of them at the moment because it's fluctuating and the meta changes, but a lot of competitive armies can be Stormcast armies, and because their armies can have 3-up saves rerolling 1 quite easily, or potentially even a 2-up save rerolling 1, especially on the more elite units, which can be really hard to deal with. So what certain people take to a tournament to try and counter it with, which is what I used to do when I went to tournaments in 1st edition, is take lots of elite units. So basically units that had loads of rend, your Morgos Archai, your Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, your Nagash. I would take all those units, and Flesh Eater Courts as another example. I would take Flayers over Crypt Horrors because the Flayers had the rend. However, if your opponent doesn't know who they're fighting, let's say you're playing in a tournament, and they've brought all their heavy rend armies, and then they come across you, who you don't care about their rend at all, and they might have brought really sort of troops that are only really good at killing elite choices, like good save choices, if you see what I mean. where, you know, we see it all the time, where there's some weapons you can load your guys out with, so they might have an extra rend instead of an extra damage, or an extra rend instead of like a better to hit characteristic, or a better to win characteristic, you know, that sort of thing. So they've tailored their army to go against a enemy army that's going to have a really good save, but it will be a save that is rendable. However, with the Nighthaunt, if your opponent brings that army against them with the heavy rend, it's going to be a complete waste of time, and by wasting that, it's also going to be a waste of points. It's not going to be tailored against your army, and you're already at an advantage up. So that's another great way why Ethereal is good, because you've got what's, you know, I like to call the sort of Stormcast and Nighthaunt sort of rival in the meta there. One of them you need to take lots of rend to beat, and then the other one isn't going to be affected by your rend at all. So something to bear in mind there. If you want to play as the Nighthaunt, it's a good thing there, and then if you're going to play against them, something to bear in mind when you're tailoring your list. So that is one of their main ways of how they're durable. The other way, which is pretty traditional with Death, is that a lot of their units are summonable, and what this means is that they can be brought back from the afterlife to fight again for Nagash in a never-ending servitude. So summonable is something I'm not going to go into right now, just because it's sort of is spread out throughout their abilities and stuff, the Nighthaunt. And what I would say is, you're also interested in, like I was saying, like you know, how they fast move across the table. You know, how do they feed off fear? Why is fear so good for them to use as a weapon against the enemy, etc. Like I was saying at the start of the video. Be sure to check out my Battle Tome review for the Nighthaunt, where I just covered the command traits, battle traits, artifacts, and spell laws, those sort of things. But within that, I did talk about, like I say, their allegiance abilities, which really sort of play on their movement, and, you know, like how they use fear as a weapon. So make sure you check that out if you're interested. So now that we've talked about the basics of the Nighthaunt army and what really a Nighthaunt army is and how it plays on the tabletop, let us go into our first unit. Now, how I want to do this is I want to look at the basics units first. So we'll be starting with the Chainrasps Horde, and then make our way up to the stronger units as a bit of a treat towards the end. So that's what we'll do. We'll start with the Chainrasps Hordes, as I think they are the most battle line, you know, numerous spirits amongst the Nighthaunts. And what we do, we'll talk about a bit of lore about each one of these units you have in the Nighthaunt. I have already done in a past video talked about what the original Nighthaunt units were, you know, like the Hexwraiths, the Spirit Host, the Chainrasps, the Tomb Banshees, the Black Coach, etc. But I will re-go over them again just to reiterate them, and also to talk about the sort of changes they've had. So, like I said, starting with a Chainrasps Horde. Now, these guys are your, you know, traditional battle line for the army, if you like. You know, they're your, you know, mass infantry for this army. They are, a little bit of lore is that the reason why they look like they are sort of, you know, like in stocks and chains, is because the majority of them were, you know, offenders. They were in prison, they had done crimes, and because of that, you know, Nagash is obviously all wise and powerful, and he bestowed his own sort of justice upon them, and that's why these people, you know, they thought death may end their, you know, imprisonment, you know, all the chains and, you know, like being hanged and all that sort of thing. It'll be an end to, you know, not having any liberty. However, Nagash had different plans. Nagash was like, right, okay, you know, your sentence has not ended yet. So that's why they're all in this sort of aesthetic, but, you know, by no means does that make them, you know, like weak or anything, because, you know, a horde of Chainrasps is a frightening force. A sword or axe might pass through a Chainrasp without finding purchase, but the spike club or rusted blades wielded by the evil beings can mangle flesh and shatter bone. So, like I said, they are, you know, the bottom of the Nighthaunt, but they're not, you know, taken lightly. And in a horde, you know, they will swarm you and they will chop you into pieces, whilst you barely been able to do any damage back at them. So, let's talk about their war scroll. Now we've looked at the lore a little bit. So we're going to start with the will. So they have a movement of 6 inches. They have a 5+ save. They have a bravery of 6. They have 1 wound. They have a 1 melee weapon. Whereas the malignant weapon, it has a range of 1 inch. It has 2 attacks. It's a 4 to hit. It's a 4 to wound. No rend. And 1 damage. So just looking at the stat characteristics there. Movement of 6, not bad at all, especially for basic infantry. And bear in mind this is death, so, you know, take away fleshly corpse for a moment. Movement of 6 is really good, and it gets better because, you know, the other great thing about Nighthaunt is that they can all fly. And I did mention this at the start of my video by saying, you know, they're really movable because of teleportation. And to be honest, a big part of that is because they can fly as well. So movement 6 is great. A 5+ save. Yeah, you know, it is what it is. It's not too bad. Like I said, these are your bottom for the Nighthaunt. They're the most basic, you know, infantry they have. So fair enough. They have 6 bravery. The only death unit to have 6 bravery. But do not worry. We'll look to that in a moment. And they have, for their, you know, wounds, 1 wound, you know, we're not surprised there. And then the malignant weapons, you know, 1 inch range, 2 attacks, not bad. 4 to hit, 4 to wound, no rend, 1 damage, very consistent, so not bad at all there. And then when we talk about, you know, the whole thing about, ridiculous thing about them having 6 bravery, do not worry about that, because now we're going to go into sort of their abilities and stuff. So, the Dread Warden, the leader of the unit, is a Dread Warden. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of the Dread Warden's malignant weapon. In addition, a Chainrasps horde has a bravery characteristic of 10 instead of 6, while it includes a Dread Warden. So, like I said, bravery 6, don't worry about it, because as long as this guy's in your unit, which he will be, there's no reason why he wouldn't be, unless a giant or a overgrown lizard with Sigmar armor on it comes wallowing up to your lovely big unit and just plucks your leader and eats it, and then your bravery is, you know, essentially fucked. But apart from those scenarios, and maybe a couple other things that could happen in the game, your Dread Warden's generally safe. You know, your leader of the unit is generally going to be okay, and is going to be the last model you take away from that unit. Okay, and then its abilities. So it's got the ethereal. So like I said, ignores and modifies positives or negatives when making save rolls for attacks that target this unit. So I've already explained why that's really good, and that is always, unless you know, of course, the enemy doesn't have any rend, it is always going to come in useful, which is, you know, like I say, unless the enemy doesn't have any rend, the enemy is going to have rend more times than not, I would say. And then we move on to their last ability, which is a chilling horde. So you can reroll wound rolls of 1 for this unit while it has more than 10 models in the unit. So yeah, that's not bad. I mean, I think it would be nice if we saw that stacked up a bit more. You know, like you get to reroll 1s if you've got you know, 10 or more models in the unit. However, if you had 20 or more models in the unit, you get to reroll all failed win rolls. I think something like that would be cool. But you know, I can see why they've done this. Maybe just to bring in, you know, for the sake of balance, as you're already getting a pretty good versatile battle line unit here. To be fair, especially if it starts with 2 attacks. Force a hit, force a wound, no rend, 1 damage. Yeah, and you know, you get a bit of a horde bonus. Nothing like compared to the horde bonus for skeletons and stuff, but you are getting something. So, that are the Chainrasps hordes. And to look at the last thing for them that is really sort of going to come into synergy is the keywords. So they've got Death, Malignant, Nighthaunt, Summonable, and Chainrasps Horde. So obviously the 2 most important ones there are, well, obviously Death is important, but the 2 most important ones there are going to be the Nighthaunt and the Summonable, to try and get the synergies within the army. And Summonable is a big thing in this army, so it's good that they've got it. And then looking at the only thing to look at left, which is talking about their points. So for 10, they're going to set you back 80 points. But if you take the max size unit for them, which is 40, it's going to cost you 280 points. So they're the same price point as Skeleton Warriors. I'm not too sure if they're the same when they're taking the max. what discount the skeleton warriors get. I think it's 280, but I'm not too sure. Can't remember off the top of my head. So they are, a pretty good, comparison against skeletons. I personally prefer the skeletons just because I love how many attacks you can ramp up. However, the Chainrasps are a lot more durable off the bat, and they're also a lot better off the bat. So if you said to me 10 Chainrasps versus 10 skeletons, I would say the Chainrasps all day long. They've, like I say, more versatile, they're faster, they've got a better save, they've got better attacks, they've got better abilities. But the skeleton warriors are more of a horde unit. Not that the Chainrasps hordes aren't very good as a horde unit, because it is sort of in their name, but like I said, they're more versatile. And then the only other thing as well is that something worth mentioning is that they are the only pure battle line army that the Nighthaunt have, which means that you could take the Chainrasps horde in a Legions of Nagash army or a Death army, and it would still be battle line. Whereas the other battle line options for the Nighthaunt army are only battle line options if you're take the Nighthaunt Allegiance, which I presume you're going to do if you're listening to this. But if you're not, which you're more than welcome to, taking Legions of Nagash, just something to bear in mind that these guys would count as your battle line. So something good to note there. So those are the Chainrasps hordes, which, like I say, I think are the most sort of basic battle line you have within your Nighthaunt army. And then moving on to something that's a bit more low model count for a battle line option, but this is a battle line option if you take the Nighthaunt Allegiance. And the reason I want to talk about it now is because it was the sort of traditional battle line for the Nighthaunt, especially when they first became their own army, when the first General's Handbook dropped, and that would be the Spirit Hosts. Now, Spirit Hosts are the souls of the damned, stripped of body and identity, screaming endlessly for the life they have lost. They long wait to take out their rage upon the living, and the very touch of their claws can turn blood to ice or stop a heart from beating. So what I'm getting from their lore so far is that they're really quite friendly, they're very lovable, they sort of just want to give you a bit of a hug, but unfortunately they have the nasty side effect of killing you. And like I said, it might be to do that they really are annoyed that they're dead. So, if they can't live, no one can. That seems to be their attitude here. But, I think there is a point to like from these guys, especially how the model is one skeleton coming out of the ground with 3 spirits coming out of it. It really is proof that every single person who died and became a spirit host suffered from split personality disorder. And I think that is something we should, think about when we're dealing with the spirit hosts. And if you're fighting against spirit hosts and you're trying to kill them, shame on you. Anyway, let's go talk about what they actually do in the game. So they have a movement of 6, which I say is good because they can fly, of course. A save of 4, pretty good. We're getting a step up now from the Chainrasps. However, like I say, they come in units of 3, so you would quite like them to have a 4-up save, wouldn't you? And then their bravery 10, fantastic. We get used to that with death. However, like the Chainrasps, starts at 6, so good thing these guys got 10. Wounds, they've got 3 wounds. Yep, very good. They need it. If it was a 2 wound thing, they'd be a bit weak, so 3 wounds is good. And like I said, they're 3 spirits that came out of 1 skeleton, so they're worth more in death, I suppose, with all their personalities. And then going into their melee weapons, so they have the Spectral Claws and Daggers, which is their only weapon, has a 1-inch range, 6 attacks, 5 to hit, force to wound, no rend, and 1 damage. That sounds a bit meh, not fantastic. However, you probably know the trick with the Spirit Host, and that's coming into their abilities. So they're ethereal, which I told you the reasons why that's good. Then what comes into the reason you want to take these guys is because, they get a lot of attacks, but they're hitting on 5s, so that's not too good. So the reason you want to take these guys is the Frightful Touch. And that is if an unmodified hit roll for an attack made with the Spectral Claws and Daggers is a 6, that attack inflicts 1 mortal wound, and the attack sequence ends. Do not make a wound roll or save roll. So what that means is every time you roll a 6 to hit, it's a mortal wound to the enemy. Now this does mean, as there's a modified hit roll of 6, that means if you can, +1 to your, hit rolls, that's not going to come to effect of it. It will mean that if you're getting +1 to your hit rolls, instead of hitting on 5s, now you're hitting on 4s, which is fantastic. However, you're still only going to do mortal wounds on 6s. But the important thing to note here is, because when I first read this, when the change to the Spirit Host happened in this book, because they used to be able to just get a mortal wound on a 6 to hit, and I thought that was fantastic because, well, when I say on a 6 to hit, I mean a 6+, so like I said, I thought that was fantastic, as you could get pluses to that. You can make them do mortal wounds on 5s and sometimes even 4s if you're really lucky and you put loads of things together, and then that means that your unit that has a unit 3 that's making 18 attacks and doing mortal wounds on 4 or 5s is really good. However, in this new edition, like I said, when I first saw this change and it's an unmodified hit roll of 6, I thought, oh, that's got weaker. However, I would say that my initial thoughts were wrong, because now that I have dived into the second edition more, I've came to realise there's a lot more ways to be -1 to hit than to be +1 to hit. So if the ability still worked on a 6+, that would mean that it could be negafied as well. Like if the enemy made you -1 to hit and you won't get any pluses to hit, you're not doing mortal wounds anymore, and now you've just got a unit that's got 6 attacks and it's hitting on 6s, and maybe will make the enemy have to do a save roll. So yeah, I definitely think this change is for the better, and it's something we're going to see repeated throughout a lot of the Nighthaunt units, particularly the older ones. So yep, I think that's a good unit. Just looking at their keywords, they're deaf, they're malignant, they're Nighthaunt, they're summonable, and of course they have the Spirit Host keyword, which, like I said, this is going to be a recurring thing here. Of course deaf is important as a keyword, obviously it's going to have the deaf keyword, but the Nighthaunt and the summonable keyword are the key things here at the moment, as they can be brought back to life, and they have all the synergies through the Nighthaunt keyword. And let's not obviously play dumb stuff. There's everything in this book. I'm going to read through all the war scrolls. They're all going to have the Nighthaunt keyword, but it's just an important thing to remember. So that is the Spirit Host. Looking at their points, what have we got? They are actually 120 points for 3 models. Now, quite expensive, certainly more expensive than the Chainrasps horde, so like I say, quite a big step up. But I wanted to talk about them because they were the sort of more traditional battle line you had, but for the amount of attacks you get, and for that sort of obviously it depends on the dice, but on average 3 mortal wounds per unit, that's not too bad. I mean, if you want to compare it to like Star Storm Aces and stuff that are almost guaranteed mortal wounds, obviously it's not going to be as good. But if you also, like I say, these guys are versatile. Again, you can send them against high save armies, good save armies, like Stormcast, where they're 3-up saves you roll on 1s now, you see more commonly, or sometimes even a 2-up save you roll on 1. You can send them against them, and you know that they should be able to put a few more wounds for you at least. And then on the flip side, if you are attacking a army that has generally bad saves, like I don't know, Skaven or something like that, you can send these guys up against them, and that you might get a couple or a few more wounds off. If you're taking a unit of 3, statistically you should get 3 mortal wounds every combat phase. But the other thing to remember is that if your opponent does not have good saves, you're making 18 attacks with 3 models, aren't you? So it's not going to be hard for you to pile in your 3 models into combat. You're hitting on 5s, however there are ways to help you hitting here in this army. And also, if you get through to the wounding and your enemy's only got like a 6-up save, they're probably going to have a handful of dice to make those save rolls, and again it's just going to be that weight of dice that's really going to tip it in your favour there. So the Spirit Host, I'm a fan of them. I like the models, absolutely despair and hate to put them together. I've only ever put 3 together in my life, not including the ones you get on the Mortar kit and the Nagash kit. Those were fine, those were fine to put together. I actually did like a bit of conversion work, especially with Arcan and Manfred when I did those ones. They were great fun building them. However, the kit themselves, for their own Spirit Hosts, I didn't really get on with them, shall we say. Like I said, I've only built 1 kit, and it was I think it was the 3rd kit I ever built for Age of Sigmar. So yeah, you know, like I wasn't as good then as, you know, the hobby as I am now. So maybe that played into it, but I found they were a little bit their, you know, instructions could be made a little bit better. And to be honest, like I said, that was at the start of Age of Sigmar for me, so that was what, like 3-4 years ago. So with the new battle tome and you know, like even just rebasing the models, they probably have made the instructions a bit easier, so don't be put off by that. So those are the spirit hosts. Now the next one I want to talk about, and keeping with the theme of the sort of the older models from the Nighthaunts or more traditional ones, and staying with the battle line, is going to be the Hexwraiths, and they are battle line within the Nighthaunt allegiance. So the Hexwraiths ride upon ghostly seas. The Hexwraith rides straight through their foes, turning them blood to ice and snatching souls from screaming warriors. Once night, both proud and cruel, these ethereal killers relive their glory by visiting pain and death upon mortals. So sort of getting the same vibe here as the spirit host. You know, they're a little bit, you know, pissed off that they're dead. So, you know, if they can't be alive, no one can. Which, you know, again, is something, you know, you can relate to and something you can understand and something you can really appreciate their anger towards. So that's, you know, a little bit of lore for them. Going into their rules, they've got a 12-inch movement, so that's a 12-inch flying movement. That is absolutely huge, especially, you know, for these cavalry models. That's great. And there's going to be, you know, a good ability what ties in with that later. So they've got a 4+ save, fantastic, same as the spirit host, but really good, reliable 4+ save, which cannot be, you know, modified unless you're getting, you know, your rerolls once to save. They've got bravery 10, and they've got 2 wounds, which, you know, they're cavalry, so that's quite traditional, especially with the sort of the, I don't want to say the older models, but, you know, the more traditional sort of fantasy models. You know, 1 wound for the rider and 1 wound for the mount. And then going into their melee weapons, now they've got 2 this time. So they've got the Spectral Scythe, which is obviously wielded by the guy on top of it. It's got 1-inch range, 2 attacks, force to hit, freeze wound, -1 rend, 1 damage. And then the Hooves and Teeths from the Skeletal Steed. It's got 2 attacks, it's got 4 to hit, a 5 to wound, no rend, 1 damage. So looking at the scythe first, 2 attacks is good. Hitting on a 4 is good. Winning on a 3 really is good there. It's, you know, I'd say great. And the -1 rend, which is fantastic. And the 1 damage, yeah, it's only 1 damage, but, you know, you're getting rend there, and you're wounded on a 3, and you're getting 2 attacks, so you can't really complain there. I think that's pretty good. And then looking at the Hooves and Teeths, just the standard skeletal attacks, really, isn't it? Like I say, for the horse, so, you know, 2 attacks, hits on a 4, good. Wins on a 5, no rend and 1 damage. You know, it doesn't sound that good. However, it can really do that extra wound you need to do to the enemy just to wipe out that unit, or to, you know, put them on a certain damage that you need to. And a lot of the time, even though, you know, the rider's attack is meant to be a lot better, the horse does more damage anyway. You know, I think that's traditional Warhammer. So looking into their abilities, so firstly you've got the Hellwraith. The leader of the unit is a Hellwraith. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of a Hellwraith Spectral Scythe. So that's nice and simple, something you're going to remember. And it's something that's not like, oh, you know, +1 to wound for the leader of this unit, where it's like, oh, well, okay, well, they're not going to roll his attack separately. No, just +1 attack, so nice and simple there. And yeah, then that guy's making 3 attacks with an attack that's got rend on it, so fantastic. This unit can fly, so like I mentioned already, 12-inch move, flying, great. It's ethereal, so like I said, that's great for its durability. And then it's got the frightful touch, like the spirit host, which is, you know, if you get an unmodified hit roll of a 6 for the Spectral Scythe. This is only for the Spectral Scythe, this is obviously not for the mount as well, but you get a hit roll of a 6, an unmodified one for the Spectral Scythe, it's going to do a mortal wound. So when, like, even if you take a basic unit of these guys, so that's a unit of 5, that is 10 attacks, which turns into 11 attacks, because obviously, you know, your Hellwraith is making an extra one for being the leader of the unit. And that's 11 attacks, which, you know, if you get 6s, is more wounds. I think that's pretty damn good, in all honesty. Yeah, definitely. You've got a good chance of doing, you know, at least 1 or potentially 2 more wounds every combat phase of a unit of 5 of them, unit of, you know, 10 of them. And then you're making, you know, 21 of attacks, and probably, you know, you're not going to... It's, you know, very hit and miss with the more wounds, but you could get very lucky there. You know, some games, or some combats you're going to get, you know, none, and then some combats you will get loads. That's just the way how it will work. Like I say, swingy, but when it works, it will be beautiful. And then the last ability, which is Spectral Hunters, which is in your movement phase. Immediately after this unit has moved, you can pick an enemy unit that has any models that a model from this unit passed across. If you do so, roll a dice for each model from this unit that passed across the enemy unit. For each roll of a 5+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So you do mortal wounds in the combat phase, you do mortal wounds when you move over them, and then as I've mentioned in the video of the Blasphemy review when I talked about their leader's abilities, if any unit from the Nighthaunt army gets a 10+ when they charge, they get to attack in the charge phase as well. So this unit, if you got, you know, I think a good size unit of these guys, you know, at least a unit of 10, they're doing mortal wounds, you know, more or less in the movement phase. If they're lucky and they get that 10+ to charge, they're doing mortal wounds more likely in the charge phase, and then they're probably more likely going to do mortal wounds in the combat phase. And when I keep on saying more than likely, I can guarantee you almost certainly, and obviously not completely because this is Warhammer and it's luck of the dice, but you should get at least 1 mortal wound off in each one of your turns. But if you're really lucky, you could get absolutely bucket loads, which is why I really like these guys. They are swingy, of course, but they are very good at charging over the enemy's battle line and then getting to all the sort of like goodies they've got on the other side. You know, sort of like you've taken the lid off the cookie jar now and you can get to what you really want to take out. So that's why I quite like these guys. They're very flexible. They're very quick at getting to places, like I said, to take away those key opponents that the enemy has. You know, like their blood secretors or their wizards or that, you know, really annoying hero that doesn't really do much in the game apart from just buff everything else. These guys are going to be good at getting rid of it. And like I say, you know, tend to do that. Might be a bit hard to move over, but because they're movement 12, it's not bad there. You know, maybe even taking unit 5 could be good. So yeah, I quite like those guys. You know, they are similar to the Spirit Host. You know, they're the you know, sort of the older boys in the block, if you like. They've been around for a while, so they're not as shiny, they're not as tempting as the newer stuff. But I think they still got a place, and I think aesthetically they still fit into the army as well. So I do like them there. And then talking about their keywords, they've got Death, Malignant, Nighthaunt, Sunball, and Hexwraiths. So of course, very similar to the other keywords we looked at, and like I said before, Nighthaunt and Sunball keywords are the main ones there, particularly the Sunball ones. Now, looking at their points, so for 5 models, and you can take them in a maximum of 20. For 5 models though, to start with, it's going to cost you 160 points. So, quite expensive, especially compared to some of the other things you can get for 160 points in different armies. Yeah, like I say, quite expensive. I feel like if you take them, you know, like I say, compared to points in other armies, you know, they might be a little bit expensive, but I feel like if you take them, especially just to try them out, I don't think you'll think straight off the bat, oh, you know, these are waste of points, I shouldn't have bought them, they haven't done anything. I think they will add to your game. They'll give you the flexible tactical options of how great their movement is, and like I say, the Nighthaunt army can do some teleport shenanigans anyway, but, you know, these guys can still do a lot more and add a lot more because of how good their movement is. So yeah, I do feel like they have a place. If you've got some of these models anyway, I definitely recommend trying them out in a list, see how they do, as I really do feel like they could have potential. And now we move on to something a lot more new and shiny, and this will be the last battle line choice for your Nighthaunt army, and this is the Grimghast Reapers. So who exactly are these lovely characters, I hear you ask? So, what they are arch plotters and schemers in life. Grimghast Reapers are cursed in their undeath to kill indiscriminately. Those foolish enough to stand before Grimghast Reaper usually end their lives hacked apart into bleeding chunks of meat. So, similar to the previous ones we looked at, they sound like lovely fellows. Also, I can see a good business model they've probably already got going here, so they obviously like to kill indiscriminately, you know, that's their thing, and also they don't waste the product. They've got the meat there, and as it's already cut up to chunks, it's a perfect, you know, mouthful for different types of flesh eater courts out there. So it's perfect for the Grimghast to, once they cut up these meat, to send it on to the flesh-eater courts as a sense of a bit more of an extra income. So it's nice to see that they are quite opportunistic and that they are helping out their other friends within the deaf society. Right, now looking to see what they're like in the game. Now what I'm first going to start off by saying is that I know a lot of people have been using Grimghast Reapers in a Legions of Nagash list, where essentially when they die, because they're a summonable unit, they can be brought back to life using the command ability what Legions of Nagash has. I'm not going to go into that because I personally haven't played it, because for one, I don't have 30 Grimghast Reapers, also because I'm not going to say it's broken, but I see it's winning a lot of tournaments at the moment, so I'm not going to talk about this list too much, because if it's doing this well in tournaments, there's probably going to be an FAQ that's going to nerf their abilities in that list. Now, I'm not saying that they need to be nerfed, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying don't really sort of build any ideas towards that list with these guys. That's my personal opinion. If you do want to build that good competitive list, have a look yourself and crack on that way, but I'm not going to focus that in this video. I'm going to sort of talk about my own opinions on the Grimghast Reapers as I see them on their war scroll. Right, so starting off, they've got an 8-inch movement, they've got a 4+ save, they've got bravery 10, and they've got 1 wound. So melee weapons, there is 2 different types. You have the slasher scythe, and then the second weapon is only wielded by the ex-Toller of Chainrasps, which is the leader of the unit, and this weapon is, obviously the special weapon for the unit, and it's only going to be for the leader to use it. So looking at the slasher scythe first, it's got a 2-inch range, it's got 2 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 1 damage, and then the death nail, which is the weapon which is wielded by the ex-Toller of Chainrasps, has got a 2-inch range, 1 attack, freeze to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. Right, so looking at these stats, going back to the top, so 8-inch movement, really good. Is like the fastest infantry we've seen so far for the Nighthaunt out of the ones that I've been reading, and it flies as well, so it's just that much a bit further. Obviously you need to charge these guys, obviously they're going to get a good movement up towards the enemy, and then they can charge and even attack behind. If you need to run them, you're making what on average on a 1d6, what the bad average is what, a 3 on 1 dice, so if you run them they're making an 11-inch move. For an infantry unit, that's really nice and good. Right, and then a save 4+, like I said, that's pretty standard through the Nighthaunt, but as it's a unmodified save of a 4+, that's fantastic. Bravery 10, great, like I say, we expect that with death, but it's good that they've got it for sure. And 1 wound. They're an elite infantry unit. You could argue it'd be nice they've got 2 wounds, but 1 wound's fair enough. To be fair, looking at the models, when I had my game against the Nighthaunt, what I put on the channel a few days ago, I thought actually this is the first time sort of seeing them in person, like in a big unit, and I thought actually they're really quite big. I was surprised they didn't have 2 wounds, but they're an infantry unit, they're quite slim and skinny. It's sort of their cloak that makes them look big, so fair enough. And then talking about their weapons, the slasher scythe as just a standard weapon for the unit, 2 attacks each, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 1 damage, and a 2-inch range to that as well, so you're going to get quite a few into combat if you're taking a big unit, which is great. Yep, that's a nice, like I said, 2 attacks and you get a -1 rend. It's fantastic. And then the death nail, and I think that's correct how you pronounce it. I presume the K is silent. If it's not, I do apologise. But anyway, so talking about what it does, like I've mentioned, 2-inch range, 1 attack, freeze to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. Of course, you're only going to get 1 of these in the unit. However, that's not a bad stat at all, Like I said, freeze to hit and freeze to wound. You're not going to get much better than that unless you're going sort of special character-wise. And, certainly for sort of an infantry unit. Especially if unmodified. And then you've got a -1 rend to it, which is great. You would be disappointed, wouldn't you, if it didn't have a -1 rend when the normal weapon in the unit does. And then 2 damage. So nice, straightforward there. I do like that. And, it's nice that it gets a special weapon. I like, a lot of other units out there where it's like, get +1 to wound or something, which is would be a letdown, I feel like, especially in an elite unit like this. So, then we are going to look at the abilities. So, The first one, you know, saying that it can fly in ethereal. We've talked about this and I've already mentioned why that's really good. The next one, reach like corn. So you can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made with this unit's slasher size if the target has 5 or more models. So reroll all failed hit rolls for attacks. That's fantastic. You know, it's not just like you're rerolling ones. That's all of them. Like I say, if you're hitting on 4, which is, you know, your highest, you know, target you're going to try and get to wound, you only need a 3. So you're getting your rerolls to hit, which is a lot better than getting your rerolls to wound, because you're only wounded on a 3. So hitting on a 4, rerolling all failed hit rolls, so you're going against, you know, unit 5 models. What isn't particularly hard to do, even if you fight a more elite army, like a Stormcast army, or you know, some of the other elite ones out there. Like even if I look at my Flare army for a Flesh-Eater Court, yeah, sure, I'm taking units of flares and stuff, you know, crit flares, which, you know, come basic size unit 3. But I have run them, you know, like in unit sizes of 9 or even 12, and you know, that's certainly more than 5 more models. So it's, you look at it, the Reap Like Corn ability, and you think this is great against horde armies, and which it is, because you'll be getting that buff a lot of the time until you, like, you know, dwindle that unit size down so little that if it's a horde unit and it's got less than 5 models in it, it's not really a threat to you anymore. Unless it's holding a key objective or something, then, you know, the Grimghast Reapers is going to kill them pretty quickly, as that will be great strategic importance to you. So yeah, it's not just about the horde, it's also going to be good about quite a few elite armies out there, as like I said, like even you taking like a flare army, you're still going to have, you know, units of 9 or at least 6 in that. Against ogres, you're going to have like ogre bulls with quite big unit sizes, and yeah, that's pretty good. And like I say, if I think about another army I've taken to a tournament, which is my like Nagash list, I took in first edition, took it a couple of times, which is basically Nagash and bringing all his powers. So it was, when I made it, I sort of, I'm not saying it wasn't competitive, but I made it, I literally completed the list when I was in Bugsman's bar before the tournament, literally 10 minutes, just thinking like, actually I want to give him that spell and so on, writing out down a bit of paper. But yeah, so like that's the list I was taking, and it was, like I say, Nagash and his friends. So it was basically Nagash, 4 Morgus Archai, a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, and then whatever change I had left over to get my battle line. And my battle line was, if I remember correctly, 5 Dire Wolves, 10 Skeleton Warriors, and then a unit of 4 Morgus Archai. So obviously that was not really the sort of spare change. Just spare change got me, you know, the Dire Wolves and Skeleton Warriors. Of course I had like a Necromancer and a Chainrasps as well. But that battle line, like I said, it was sort of like as a tax, as like, oh, I need to say battle line, so, you know, I'll just get the cheapest stuff. However, it was key importance to me in the game. If the enemy could wipe out my, you know, 15 models I had there, you know, the 5 Dire Wolves and the 10 Skeleton Warriors, that would really make my life hard trying to get the objectives. As yes, Nagash and the Morghast and the Zombie Dragon in every single game I had, even against really tough Nurgle opponents, managed to just absolutely just smash the enemy units off those objectives. I still needed units to sit on them, and that's what the Dire Wolves and Skeleton Warriors were doing if they weren't bubble wrapping Nagash or the Morghast or, you know, the Vampire Lord on a Zombie Dragon. So they were so important to me. You know, just that, even if it's just like a really low point cost unit, being able to quickly go, right, okay, you know, Grimghast Reapers, take out that unit. So if I take out the only sort of, you know, multi-model unit they've got on their list, everything else they got on their list is super elite, you know, either monsters or, you know, like monstrous infantry. The opponent isn't going to be able to get the objectives, essentially. So that was a bit of a, you know, a sort of an off point there about this ability, but I just wanted to give you sort of my perspective on it, and, you know, really from my own experiences of why that ability is so good. So, and then we look into the next ability, which is For Whom the Bell Tolls. And now it says, allocate wounds inflicted by the death knell after allocating wounds inflicted by the slasher scythes. For each enemy model that's slain by wounds inflicted by a death knell, you can inflict 1 mortal wound on an enemy unit within 3 inches of the model armed with the death knell. Okay, so like I said, I do apologise if it's not Death Nail. I sort of want to call it Death Krell. You know, like Krell, like the old character, but unfortunately he's not here anymore. However, this ability, yeah, I wouldn't say it's as good as the last one, but, you know, it's a bonus. I would look at it like that. You know, obviously don't say no to it. And, you know, you think, are you going to slay a model, you know, with the 2 damage attack? You know, obviously if you're going against monstrous infantry, it's going to be a bit harder. They're going to already need to have taken damage. But if you go against, you know, just horde units with like 1 wound, you know, models and stuff, not even horde units, you know, even elite infantry, you know, like Grimghast Reapers, you know, they only have 1 wound, so you've got a good chance of doing it. Or even like, you know, against Blood Warriors and stuff, they've got 2 wounds, so you're going to get this ability off quite a lot. And the thing what I like about it, it's not, you know, if a wound, you know, if damaged by the Death Nail slays an model, roll a dice, and on a 4 up, then you pick something within 3 inches. It's just, no, you're getting it straight away, you know, well done, you killed something, now kill something else. So I like that, and I respect that rule. So that's pretty cool. I like it. It's an extra bonus, isn't it? And, you know, we joke aside just saying, like, you know, oh, it's just 1 extra mortal wound. However, remember, a lot of armies don't get saved against mortal wounds. Of course, there's abilities and stuff, and all death armies do, and, you know, a lot of Nurgle armies and so on. However, you know, most armies don't have saves against mortal wounds, and doing that 1 extra mortal wound might just kill, you know, that 1 model left in that enemy unit that's bogging down your big unit of Grimghast Reapers, so then they can move on and attack the next turn, you know, charge something else. Or, you know, it might, you know, kill that 1 wound left on that really annoying Stormcast Eternal hero that you've been trying to kill so much, but you just don't have enough Ren to do it. And then that mortal wound has just taken away the last wound he had. And if that ever does happen to you, it will make your day for sure. So yeah, it's a lovely extra little ability there. Right, and then looking at the keywords, they are Death, Malignant, Nighthaunt, Sunbull, and Grimghast Reapers. So obviously I've talked about this before, Nighthaunt and Sunbull, the most important ones, and then the most relevant one, because bear in mind everything in here is going to have Nighthaunt, is the Sunbull keyword. Right, so then all there is to look for is looking at their points. So the Grimghast Reapers, like I say, they're battle line if you're taking the Nighthaunt army, which you will be presumably if you're watching this. If you're taking Legions of the Nagash army, you know, it might not be battle line, but they're still going to be a great addition. So the Grimghast Reapers, they cost, for 10 models, you have to take 10 minimum, which is why the Soul Wars box is really annoying. But that's a conversation I think I might have already had, or if not, a conversation for another time. Like I say, you get 10, the max size unit is 30, and 10 of them are going to cost you 140 points, but you get a discount if you take the max, which is 30. And if you take 30, it's only going to cost you 360 points. So you'll be saving yourself, if my maths is correct, 60 points there. If you take a you know, max size unit of them, you know, you get the what's it called, the Legion discount or something like that for the you know, the more sort of horde units. So that's cool, that's great. So you get a discount, especially like, you know, taking the unit of 30, you know, it's not going to be a bad thing to do. So yeah, that's pretty good. And points wise, I'd say they're worth it. I'd say obviously take more of them are going to do, you know, going to be, it's sort of the investment, isn't it? You know, the more you spend points in them, the better they're going to be. If you want them just with bodies on the board, I would probably, you know, instead of their sort of a killing power, I'd probably, you know, say like Chainrasps or something like that. But for the elite unit, which they are good, and especially how they synergize with a lot of other things in the army. Right, so that is the Grimghast Reapers, and with that, all the battle line options for the Nighthaunt. So moving on to another Nighthaunt unit, which are the Glaivewraith Stalkers. Now, don't worry, these aren't your typical Facebook stalkers. What they are is a Glaivewraith Stalker is an unstoppable force. Its long blade always points at the beating heart of its intended victim. Though it drifts slowly towards its quarry, it is inevitable that the hunter's glaive will one day pierce the chest of its prey. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe it is a little bit like a Facebook stalker, but a hell of a lot cooler. So, first thing to say about, obviously I presume you know what the model looks like. I'll be putting up artwork and stuff anyway so you can see. But I really love this sort of aesthetic of this model. You know, it's sort of like it's like humanoid, but it's also animalistic as well. I remember when it first came out, people saying, "Oh, it's the Undead Skaven." It's not, but you can pretend it is, which is fantastic. And yeah, they're pretty cool. They're actually based off something from Welsh folklore. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what that is, and I was going to look up the name and sort of try and tell you guys what they are based off, but if it is a Welsh name, I'm probably just going to butcher it, so I do not want to offend any Welsh people. So I'm going to leave that, and you guys can research it if you want to. But yes, it's cool that they're based off, something a bit like our own folklore. So that's pretty cool there. And yeah, they're pretty awesome models to look at. Right, so going into what they're like in the game, they've got a movement of 6, which, isn't as good as the Grimghast Reapers, but, it does say that they drift slowly towards the enemy, so fair enough. They have a 4+ save, they have bravery 10, they have 1 wound, and they have 1 melee weapon, which is the Hunter's Glaive. So this is a 2-inch range, 2 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, no rend, and 1 damage. So just looking at the stats for a moment, like I said, 6-inch movement, it's not bad. It is fast, especially for a death army. 4+ save, standard. Bravery 10, yep, great. And then a 1 wound, that's not bad either. And then looking at the weapon, it sort of just feels like a step down from the Grimghast, doesn't it? Because it's got the same range, it's got the same amount of attacks being 2, it's got a 4 to hit, which is the same, 3 to wound, which is the same, no rend, which the Grimghast Reapers have 1 rend, and they've got 1 damage, which is the same as Grimghast Reapers. So they're sort of missing that rend there, which is going to make them a little bit less good against, the elite armies, and, in particular like Storm-class armies. But if you're fighting against another Nighthaunt army, it doesn't matter. Right, okay, so those are the attacks and the stats. And then going on to the abilities, so we've got the Deathbeat Drummer. So models in this unit can be Deathbeat Drummers. A unit that includes any Deathbeat Drummers can retreat and charge in the same turn. So firstly, if you're wondering the question, yes, you can make every single model in the unit a Deathbeat Drummer. However, if you do, some great conversion potential if you really want to, but you're not going to give yourself any extra abilities. But like I've mentioned before, there are things like giants and overgrown lizards with Sigmar armor on them that like to waddle up to your army and eat certain models, and it's very annoying when they do so, and very annoying when the death skeletons banners used to bring back D6 models instead of giving the enemy a -1 bravery, and then you'd have a particularly blue Star Drake used to waddle up and eat a certain model. Not talking about my own experiences there, it might sound a little bit specific, but I absolutely fucking hate that Star Drake. Anyway, moving on. So sorry, going back to the rules. Sorry, I just got a flashback there. It was horrendous and many things died. But the Star Drake's dead now, and I actually bought a Star Drake kit and mounted its head on a pike and painted it in the same colour, just to show my opponent that I do not like his overgrown lizard, shall we say. Anyway, like I say, back to the rules. Sorry about that. So, like I say, you got the Deathbeat Drummers, which means it can retreat and charge in the same turn, which is, great. It sounds, quite straightforward, but fantastic. That means if they need to get places when they need to, especially in the later turns of the game, when they need to fucking, I'm bogged down in that combat over here, I need to retreat and charge the enemy on that objective over there to try and take it from them. Last turn of the game, I need to get that extra, victory point to turn the tide. And by getting the extra victory point, which means you get a major victory, doesn't matter if you've had a really tough game, if you get that major victory, that's all that's going to be mattered in tournaments. So, a good versatile unit there, especially how it can fly, so if it retreats, it can fly over the enemy unit, and so on. So, yes, I think that is very good there. And then its next ability, so the Point of Death. So, you can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made with the unit Hunter's Glaives, if this unit or the target unit made a charge move in the same turn. Right, so now it gets a bit more interesting, because like I said, you can retreat and charge, so you're going to be charging in, I don't know, I'd say most of your, your turns where these guys are attacking, but probably at least half of them, probably more of them if not, especially if they don't get bogged down in combat. And like we said, these guys are pretty good at not doing that. And like I say, if you need to quickly clear like a small enemy unit from objective to take it in the last turn, these guys are getting an extra bonus, an extra chance of them being able to kill the enemy unit, which is vital. So yeah, that's good there. And also, it doesn't rely on them being, like a unit of 5 or more models, which I say, isn't hard to achieve, but these guys don't have to worry about it anyway, so they're going to be killing it against monsters and heroes, etc. So yes, that's pretty good. And then, if the enemy charges them, and let's say they charge something else which is a bit more nasty in your army, and think, oh, I've charged, you know, both my units here. I've charged one into the, you know, the Glaivewraith Stalkers, but also the one into, I don't know, something like a Mongol or something like that. I think I'm going to want to attack the Mongol first, you know, to do as much damage to it, as I do not want that thing to attack me on full health. If they do that, and then you go, okay, you've damaged my Mongol a little bit, you know, if you're lucky enough. Now my Glaivewraith Stalkers that you charged are now going to get a benefit thanks to you. And then the enemy will go, oh no, I didn't realise it, you know, you know, it's a great moment when it happens. Of course, it's sort of like a one-trick pony, but it's great the first time. So yes, that's that ability, and then the only other ability they have is the ethereal one, which I've mentioned before, which is great. So yeah, these guys definitely feel like a step down from the Grimghast Reapers. However, you know, of course, this is going to be reflected in their points, because, you know, the Glaivewraith Stalkers are, you know, they don't feel the same role as the you know, the Grimghast Reapers, but that's fine. You know, these are it's quite a versatile unit, being able to, you know, retreat and charge in a turn. You know, that's definitely not an ability that should be underestimated. And the nice thing about the unit as well is that they come in sizes of minimum 4 and then maximum 16, and they cost 60 points for 4. So they're not really an expensive unit, you know, like, and what I mean that, I mean you can afford them on the cheap. If you've got like 60 points left over, you think actually it'd be quite good maybe to have a unit of these guys just for, you know, strategically, you know, for later on in the game. Give me those extra options that could really help me, you know, get the objectives. So yeah, you've got that, and then, you know, the other nice thing is that if you do buy the AoS box, you get the correct unit size in them, which is, you know, great, and something I can't say for all the units in Soul Wars, which I think is a massive mistake. So that's nice there, and yeah, I think they fit a role in the Nighthaunt army. So, you know, I'd say they're not. You might, you know, be able to run them as, you know, just like charge straight into the enemy, but I'd keep them as smaller units and more sort of tactical units. I'd even, you know, you could even maybe take a unit of 16 and keep them tactical, keep maybe a bit in reserve, or in the, you know, maybe in the underworld even, and pop them up, and then they're going to be quite good at getting about on the battlefield, particularly, like I say, in the later turns, and so on. So yes, I do like them, and I feel like they fill an other role in the Nighthaunt army, rather than just being like a weaker version of Grimghast Reapers. So that was the Grimghast Reapers. Now moving on to another unit called the Bladegheist Revenants. Now this is a unit that I will say, firstly, you know, the models look fantastic. It was the first time actually seeing the models when I had that game against Wayne, the Nighthaunt player, the other day, and the models were, like I say, I love them. I thought they were so dynamic. I thought the Grimghast Reapers were quite dynamic looking models, but the Bladegheist really for me had that next level quality, where I know it's just like a lot of cloak and stuff floating around, but it was like the way it was done, you know, no model looks like the same, and, you know, especially for Ghosts, they've all been made very differently, which is something I really like. And then looking into the lore of the Bladegheist Revenants, they are quite different from what we've seen before. So they're not the sort of the traitors or the offenders and the sort of, you know, criminals in the mortal realms. What they actually are they could be innocent, you know, they could be evil, they could be, you know, it doesn't matter what sort of soul they were. However, Nagash has repurposed them to be their only memories. It is their moment of death, so the moment of being trapped and feeling helpless, and knowing that you're thinking that your end is coming and it's inevitable. So you fight with such a fury to try and escape that reality, that, you know, you get so much more strength, you've got so much adrenaline going through you, you really are become capable of things you never thought you would be able to do. And that is what Nagash has put into these, and that is their only memories, so that makes them that much faster, that much stronger, that much more vicious, and, you know, that much more, you know, fury within them. It really sends them into a frenzy, and that is what makes them feared in the mortal realms. So, seeing what they're like in their game, they've got a movement of 8, so great. We're back up with the Grimghast Reapers on that one, so it makes them a lot faster, which is nice. And, you know, I've talked about, you know, if you run them and stuff, and, you know, the average, and, you know, they'll be getting a good movement there, especially because they can fly as well, like the rest of the Nighthaunt. Moving into the other things, they've got a 4+ safe, so that's the standard. We're glad to see that. We've got 10 bravery, fantastic. 1 wound. Like I said, that seems to be a common theme we're seeing here with the elite units of the Nighthaunt infantry in particular. And then we're looking at the weapons they've got. So they've got 1 melee weapon, which is a Tomb Great Blade, which is a range of 1 inch, 2 attacks, freeze to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. So I think that's a great attack. You know, only 1 inch range compared to the last two we looked at, well, a 2 inch range. However, 2 attacks, great. Freeze to hit, freeze to wound. You can't really ask for a better to hit into wound characteristic on an infantry unit than that. A -1 rend, great to see there, and 1 damage. You know, yeah, I mean, like, obviously 2 damage is always nice, but you know, these guys come in units of 10. It's not going to be a 2 damage attack, is it? So, yep, I'm happy with that. That's pretty good. And then looking at the abilities, so they can fly, of course, and they're ethereal, which I already said why that's great. And then they have the Fearful Frenzy, so you can reroll failed hit rolls for attacks made by this unit if it is wholly within 12 inches of any friendly Spirit Torments or Chainghasts. So we haven't looked at the Spirit Torments or Chainghasts, and that's going to be something we're going to look in a future video, the video that will come out after this video. So we're not going to dive in too much with that. However, they're getting a better ability than most of the other Nighthaunt units out of this. So they're going to be getting rerolls or fails to hit a lot more, which, you know, if you're hitting on a 3 and getting rerolled or failed hit rolls, you know, you're not doing too bad, are you? You're going to be pretty unlucky if you're not getting many hits through, especially if they're making 2 attacks each. So we're looking at the next ability, which is Whirling Death. So this unit can retreat and charge in the same turn. In addition, add 1 to the attack characteristics of this unit's Tomb Blade if it made a charge move in the same turn. So, like I've already said, they can retreat and charge, so that is fantastic. As like I talked about with the Glaivewraith Stalkers, it makes them that much more versatile, that much more important in the late game, and that much more movability and presence on the board because of it. And the other bonus they get, which gives them, you know, an up from the Glaivewraith Stalkers, is that they are actually getting an extra attack when they charge. So not even that their charges become a lot more likely, it's going to happen a lot more because they're going to be a lot less bogged down in combat compared to other units, but they're also going to be making 3 attacks each when they get their charge, which is absolutely huge in my honest opinion. So yeah, I think that is good there. Definitely nice to see that, and I think this was reflected in the battle report I had. And like I said, in this battle report we were quite tired, we did make a few mistakes, although I know I certainly made some mistakes in it, but something that we learned, and something like, you know, Wayne the Nighthaunt player has taken on board, is that when he charged my unit of 6 Crypt Horrors, he charged them with 2 separate units, one of them being the Bladegheist Revenants. And because he charged with 2 separate units and they charge fairly equally across my unit of 6 Crypt Horrors, so not all of the well, the Bladegheist, they all got to attack pretty much. I think it was 9 that got to attack, and, you know, 3 attacks each isn't bad. However, if Wayne had a unit of 20 of these guys charging my 6 Crypt Horrors instead of 10 of these guys, and then which were also 10 Dreadscythes, and then he had to, you know, attack me in one, and then I got to attack back, and then he attacked back, all that sort of thing. If he could just attack me all in one big go over, you know, 20 of these guys making 3 attacks each, Crypt Horrors, their save with a -1 onto it would mean their saves on 6s, and then they save on 6s for death save if they've got a hero nearby. That would have hugely changed things in that game, massively. If he could have wiped out that unit of 6 Crypt Horrors, which would have been possible, that would have massively potentially, you know, changed the outcome of that game, as it, you know, essentially was the Crypt Horrors that later went on to decimate those units. So a huge thing to take in, you know, mind there. Obviously, of course, we know it's better to charge the opponent, you know, and be able to hit them really hard before they can hit you back, which unfortunately the Dreadscythes took a lot of damage in that game. But yes, that's why I think the Bladegheist are really good. And like I say, you know, take a big unit of them, they all get to attack on the charge and making 3 attacks each. That's pretty damn good there. And, you know, like I said, I mentioned that ability. We're going to look more into their sort of Fearful Frenzy, that particular ability, when we look at the Spirit Torments. However, it's basically going to give these guys a good chance of re-rolling their failed hit rolls. And like I said, they're hitting on a 3, so 3 attacks on the charge, hitting on a 3, re-rolling all failed, wounding on a 3, -1 rend, 1 damage. There's not going to be many attacks you're going to miss and against most things in Age of Sigmar with a -1 rend, you're probably going to get the damage through. So yes, that is good there. I do like that. I think this is a very good and versatile unit, and especially seeing it in action. I think this unit has a lot of potential and could potentially be, I don't want to say better than the Grimghast Reapers, because they are really good and they do definitely do many certain roles, and they do sort of field them very well. You know, like there's people that have been fielding units of 30 of them, and 30 of them can be horrendous. However, I think the Bladegheist Revenants are something that might have been sort of like overlooked a little bit, so I think they are definitely something to check out. Right, and then looking at the keywords, so very similar to the last one, so Death and Malignant, Nighthaunt, Sunbull, and Bladegheist Revenants. So, of course, like I said, the main two things in there are Nighthaunt and Sunbull, and in particular, Sunbull. So, looking at their point cost then to finish them off. So, the Bladegheist Revenants, like I said, they're not your battle line option. However, they are still a good choice, and you know, they come in minimum size units of 5, maximum size units of 20. Their points are 90 for 5. However, if you take a unit of 20, it's going to cost you 320 points. So you will get a a discount there, which is nice. You know, it's not the biggest discount, but you're getting a bit, aren't you? So you can't really complain. Like I said, if you want to take a big unit of these, that's great. However, 5 1-wound models for 90 points, it's getting quite expensive now in points, in all honesty, especially compared to, like I said, the Grimghast Reapers or something like that. But I think, it goes without saying, this isn't going to be your horde unit. They only come in maximum size units of 20. However, they're going to be your lot more. It's a much more aggressive unit. Like I say, it gives you the options, the tactical options of charging, retreating, which is fantastic. I think they do still have a place, and like I say, 90 points for 5 1-wing models. When I don't know, you could look at Blood Boys, which I believe for 5 of them is 100 points, and you get 2 wounds apiece, so you're getting almost double the amount of wounds. But it's a very different comparison there. And the Bladegheist Revenants, they're summonable. They can come back. You can resurrect them. So you're getting really probably more than 5 for 90 points there, particularly if you take them in a big unit, which means they're going to be sticking around for longer. So yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think they are pretty good there. And it goes without saying that I've already mentioned their models are fantastic. I'm certainly a big fan of them. Right, so those are the Bladegheist Revenants. Now, moving on to our next unit, which is going to be the Dreadscythe Harridans. And first thing I have to say, I absolutely love these models. They are potentially my favourite models in the army. Even though I know that the army has some fantastic kits out there, like Mongol and the Black Coach and some of the named characters. But I have to say that the Dreadscythes are probably, to be honest, tied with Reichner, the Grimghast, for me, as being my favourite models in the army. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for these guys. And yeah, I just sort of I like the Banshee aesthetic. I love it that they don't actually have weapons in their hands. Their weapons are the limbs, their claws, their size for arms. I think that's fantastic, and I think they're one of the units that actually look sinister and scary. And saying that, there's not a lot on Age of Sigmar, that looks particularly scary, model wise. Like in the lore, there's loads of things that are horrendous, like mass genocide is a commonplace in Age of Sigmar. But there's not many things that look creepy. However, the Nighthaunt for me have a couple of things. Number one being the Mongol, because if you haven't seen that thing and it doesn't creep you out, I don't understand you. But for me, it looks really, really sort of sinister. It's really long hanging jaw, its teeth, it's missing its stomach, it's half its body's gone, that sort of thing. And also these Dreadscythes for me also have that sort of sinister feel and look like something out of Silent Hill or something along those lines. So anyway, that's enough talking about the actual model themselves and talking about them in lore. So what they were essentially, they used to be healers, and try to stop people from dying, essentially. And obviously Nagash isn't really a fan of people who go out their way to stop other people from dying. With Nagash, that doesn't run. When people are dying, they're gonna die, and then their souls are going to be his, because that is inevitable. So he really didn't have a particular liking to the mortals that used to be the Dreadscythes, you know, how they used to be healers. He didn't really like that. So what he thought he would do is, right, so you're dead now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to reincarnate you into a new spirit, a new being, and all I'm going to do is fill you with hate and a unending thirst to kill and slaughter and slash at enemies with, like I said, not with weapons, but with actually your body, to rip them to pieces like scalpel blades. So that's essentially Nagash taking out his revenge on these people, how they spent their mortal lives preventing death to countless victims, and now they are essentially bringing death to countless mortals to come. So that's what they're like in their lore. Let's have a look at their stats. So starting off, they've got an 8-inch movement. I've already said this is really good. You know, we've got this with the Bladegheist Revenants, and we also got it with the Grimghast Reapers. It's really, really fast, and with flying, it's great. 4+ save. So again, that's standard in this army, you know, for most of the things, but a 4+ unrandable save is again fantastic, which I mentioned before. Bravery 10, like we expected. 1 wound. That's the theme we're getting with this. A lot of the elite infantry is only 1 wound models, but that's okay because it makes them easier to bring back to life, which is what you want to do with this army. So yep, that's great. And then looking at the melee weapons, so they've got just one, which is the Scythed Limbs, which has got a 1-inch range, 3 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, minus 1 rend, 1 damage. Yep, that's nice. You've got rend there. The wound characteristic is good. It's a need to 3 to wound, and 3 attacks is really, really nice. And it's just really sort of making your opponent have to roll so many save rolls that, you know, like the weight of dice will really sort of drown them in failed armor saves. So then looking into the abilities, so we've got the Slasher Crone, which is the leader of this unit. You can add one to the attacks characteristics of the Slasher Crone Scythed Limbs. So what that means is they are making 4 attacks instead of 3, so even more attacks you're getting for yourself. It's only 1 per the unit, but you know, it's you know, of course, like I've mentioned, you're going to take away that one last. So unless, like I've already said, you get an overgrown Stormcast Lizard come up to you and eat it, or a giant, you're relatively safe. So yeah, that's good. And then it can fly, of course. Then it's also got the ethereal ability, of course, and I've already said why this is really good. It makes it a lot harder to die. It's got the Harrowing Shriek, so now we're getting sort of like the Banshee sort of feel of this unit, and that is subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy models within 3 inches of this unit unless they have a bravery characteristic of 6 or more. Okay, so what I would say firstly is I think most things in Age of Sigmar have a bravery characteristic of 6 or more. It's a little bit sad there, a little bit sad that it's not like unless you have a bravery characteristic of 7 or more, which I think would make it so probably about 50% of the stuff in the game would, you know, fall victim to this. Or if they made it, you know, like if they had bravery characteristic of 8 or more, I think the majority of things in Age of Sigmar would fall to become a victim of this ability. However, as it stands, I mean, even you look at things like Blood Reavers, you know, which I think are bravery 6, I think something like that. But their banner would give them +1 to their bravery, which makes them now have bravery characteristic of 7. So then that means that this ability no longer has effect. Or to be honest, yeah, to be fair, you know, it's a bravery characteristic looking at the ability of 6 or more, you're not going to be affected by this ability. So you're really only looking at things like Skaven or Goblins, or, you know, they're really sort of horde units, and particularly, you know, for armies that don't have the best bravery at all. And something to bear in mind that if you're playing against, you know, a Skaven army or, you know, like a Goblin army, and I don't know Goblin's bravery, but I think it's 4 bravery 4 for like Night Goblins or Moonclan Grots they're called now. So let's say they've got, you know, bravery characteristic of 4, however they've got, you know, 40 in that unit, so for every, you know, 10 there is, that they're going to plus you know, 1 to their bravery, so they're getting +4 to their bravery. I think that's how it works. They've got 40 in the unit, so then instead of having bravery 4, they've got bravery 8. Now that is true, but as it only comes effect in the battle shock phase, so They don't have a bravery characteristic of 8 for the other phases, so that would mean that it would fall subject to this. So just in case something like that comes up, just something to bear in mind that those goblins are still going to be fucked. And like I say, it's not going to happen most of the time, but if this ability applies, subtracting 1 from hit rolls is huge, especially when it's not like pick a unit that has like bravery 5 or less. It is a case of everything around 3 inches of this unit is going to become, subject to this ability. So, yeah, like I say, it's not always going to happen, but when it does, it will be useful. And then moving on to the next and last ability, which is Murderous Bloodlust. So, if the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with the scythed limbs is 6, that attack has a damage characteristic of 2 instead. So this hugely improves the attack from this unit. So let's just go through it again. So you're making 3 attacks each standard for these guys, force a hit, which isn't bad, freeze a wound, means you're going to get most of your wounds, master red, and 1 damage. But because you're making 3 attacks, which I already said is loads, it's the weight of dice for your opponent, it's also going to mean that you're going to have a lot more of a chance to get those 6s. It's not like those abilities for those attacks was like this unit, only makes 1 attack each. Then if it gets a 6th to hit, it does, or 6th to wound, whatever, it does this and that and whatever. You're getting a lot. You're getting 3 dice per models here, And if you take even like a unit of 10, and they all get to fight, you're making 31 attacks because the leader gets an extra one because she's essentially got an extra pair of limbs. Yeah, you're gonna get some 6s there. It's gonna happen. Like on the average of even 30 attacks, what are you looking at? Say 15 of them go through to wound, and then if you're probably the average about 2, 3, 6s you're going to get in your wounds, which I don't know, that's just a rough average, but even so that's still not bad. Obviously, like I said, some things this armor can be swingy, so sometimes this ability might not come into effect that much at all, and sometimes you might just wow yourself and get so many 6s that it really, really does make a big difference. So that's what I like about them. You've also got their keywords, obviously, to bear in mind, so very similar to ones we've already been through, but I'll go through them again. So they're Death, Malignant, Nighthaunt, Sumble, and then obviously Dreadscythe Harridans. So like I said before, the important things here is that they're Nighthaunt. The most important is that they are summonable, as this is going to come in more importance when we look at things like the heroes and so on. That keyword is going to come into synergies and as such. So that's the Dreadscythes, and then the only thing to look at now is their points. So just going over them, your Dreadscythe, they're not battle line options. They are just like another unit, which I was a little bit sad of, because if I was doing a Nighthaunt army, I'd love to have loads of these guys in my army as a battle line. But clearly they're an elite choice, so fair enough. They fit the other unit role fairly well. So the Dreadscythe Harridans, so they come in minimum size units of 5. Bear in mind, if you buy a box of these guys, they come in units of 10. You get 10 in the box, and you can split it into 2 5-man units, or you can have 1 big unit of 10, which I would suggest you do. I wouldn't really see too much point in running these guys in minimal size units of 5. It's not like the other units we've looked at, such as the Glaivewraith Stalkers, that are quite good as small units because they can, retreat and charge. So it means they can get around to places usefully. These guys, they're not for that. They're for their amount of attacks, essentially. So having a small unit of them, I don't personally think it's the best way to go about it in, especially bigger point games. So, like I say, minimum size unit of 5, maximum size unit of 20. 5 of them are going to cost you 90 points, and then 20 of them are going to cost you 320 points. So you will get a discount there. It's only a discount of 40 points, but it's still a discount if you want to bring a big unit of them. So you can't really sniff at that too much. And a big unit of 20, I think they're on 32mm basis. So you're only going to get 1 ranking to attack with at a time. So that's something to bear in mind. But if you're the typical imagination of you just charging this straight into an enemy battle line or something, just stretched out and getting all your attacks through, 20 models, you probably get most of them to be able to attack, to be fair, depending on the size of the unit you're attacking, or you're attacking a big monster and you've got a big charge, so you can nicely pile in around the monster. Should be able to happen, not too bad. Just bear in mind though that they are only 1-inch weapons, so you only be able to get to 1 rank of troops to attack of them, more than likely. Okay, so that's them. I think points wise, they do actually come at the same points as the Bladegheist Revenants, and they're exactly the same when you look at them, sort of their points in the, you know, where they fit into the army in the sort of match-based system, because they both are count as other units, so they're not a battle line or a leader or a behemoth or an artillery piece or a unique unit, etc. And they come in minimum size units of 5, maximum size units of 20, and they cost 90 points for 5 and 320 points for 20, so they're exactly the same point cost. I think they fill different roles. I feel like the Dreadscythe Harridans are a more offensive choice, and I think the Bladegheist are more of a tactical choice. And when I say that, it's just because, like I've mentioned, the Bladegheist can, you know, retreat and charge in the same turn. I think that's a really big point to bring out on them, like I have already mentioned. But I think the Dreadscythe Harridans, they've got that 2 damage, you know, the potential to get it. They've got, you know, the extra attack, then the you know, the Bladegheist Revenants. So they've got that, and then they've got the potential to be making the enemy -1 to hit if they've got bravery characteristics of basically 5 or less. I think it really depends what sort of army you're going to fight. I mean, obviously, if you're fighting a tournament, you don't really know, apart from, you know, like if you're thinking about, you know, high competitive tournament lists. So if you know what army you're going to fight, you know it's a low bravery army, I'd say, you know, obviously the Dreadscythe is probably going to be your preferred choice out of them and the Bladegheist Revenants. But I think on average, I do really like the look of Bladegheist Revenants, but it still pains me to say it a little bit because I love the models for the Dreadscythe. But I think probably the Bladegheist have got it just because of their, you know, they're making 1 less attack, but they're getting an extra, you know, plus with the hit. Essentially, you know, they're hitting on 3s, opposed to hitting on 4s like the Dreadscythes. They've also got a better chance of getting their rerolls for all failed hits, and then plus it with some other things that we'll look into, like I said later with the heroes. That, you know, there's ways for them to get, you know, +1 to wound and stuff like that, and you can really make these guys like really hard for them to miss their attacks to get through to the enemy. And they've got the same rend as the Dreadscythes, so I think on average the Bladegheist have got that 1 step over the Dreadscythes. So yeah, I'd probably say the Bladegheist are better than the Dreadscythes. However, I love the Dreadscythe models, so for me, I would have to get the Dreadscythes. And to be fair, like I say, it depends if you fight against low bravery armies, but they're still not bad in any way stretch of the imagination. I just think the Bladegheist are got that little bit more. They're a little bit more going on, that a little bit more, you know, synergy and a bit more tactical. But I think the Dreadscythes, for just pure, you know, combat effectiveness, are pretty good. And if they get the 6 to win, like I said, you're getting those 2 damage attacks, which are not really rare in the Nighthaunt army, but certainly not overpopulated in War Scrolls. And I know that might sound random, me just comparing those two there, just off the cuff, but it was just because, as I've seen, that they are the same point cost. You know, unless, you know, they cost exactly the same points. Like I say, they take the same size of units, they get the size, you know, mass legion discount or whatever it is for having the max size unit. I thought it'd be important to sort of compare them just to give you guys my sort of thoughts on them. Right, so those are the Dreadscythes, and now moving on to the Myrmourn Banshees. Now, again, these guys are lovely models, one of my favourites in the Nighthaunt army, you know, because I said I've got a fan of sort of Banshee models. For me, the Dreadscythes have still got that little bit, like, sort of, you know, the claws for arms, you know, fantastic, definitely out of a horror film. But the Myrmourn Banshees have definitely got a certain characteristic that is really nice, and that's sort of, you know, that also that horror and sort of sinister feel. So, who are the Myrmourn Banshees? So, essentially, in the lore, is that they used to be wizards in life, or they used to be sorcerers, so they used to be involved in the arcane arts in some way or another, and they used to, you know, as most creatures and mortals that are in the search of, you know, arcane power, they want to search more and more for it to increase their power in magical sorceries. So what Nagash's little twist he's done for these guys is that when they've died, he's still kept their sort of, you know, kept what was their sort of, you know, ambition to become more powerful in the arcane arts. But what he's done is he's turned it, instead of like sort of ambition or sort of desire, he's turned it into a lust. So something that they feed on, something that they seek, something that they feel like they need to survive. You know, they're addicted to try and get this sorcerous and magical energy inside them, you know, to empower them further. So what this means is no enemy spell is safe from the diabolical hunger of the Myrmourn Banshees. They hunt the mortal realms in search of magic to consume and living foes to stab. Even the most potent of wizards is powerless before them. So they are his sort of tool to sort of neuter enemy magic and stab plenty of people along the way who Nagash does not really get on with, and much rather than be dead and serving with him his own spectral armies. So that's the lore and sort of feel about them. Like I said, they used to be sort of sorceress, you know, hunting for, you know, like more power and influence within magic, and the Nagashers, you know, kept their, you know, wants for, you know, to become more powerful, but turned it into lust and made them go frenzy over it, and, you know, like literally, as we'll see in the rules, they sacrifice themselves to try and consume magic to empower them. Right, so looking at the rules now, so they've got a movement of 8 inches, like I say, that's great, especially keyed with flying, save of 4+, so like I said, pretty standard in the army, but really good. Bravery 10, great, and 1 wound. We've seen that a lot with these elite units. And then looking at their attacks, so they've only got 1 attack, and it is a chill dagger. So it's got a 1-inch range, it's only got 1 attack, it's a 4 to hit, a 3 to wound, -2 rend, and D3 damage. So what it essentially is the normal Banshee melee weapon. Now that might look a bit, you know, compared to what we have just looked at, you know, only 1 attack. Hits on a 4, you know, which is good. Wounds on a 3, that's great. -2 rend though, so it's going to really punch through armor, which a lot of things don't actually have the capability of doing that, especially like I say, how you can have like 3 up sage rolling 1, or even occasionally like 2 up sage rolling 1, things like that. These guys are really going to be your unit of choice to really break through that efficiently with their -2 rend. And D3 damage, yes, you could fluff your dice and you could get 1s, but you could also get lucky and get you know, 3 damage from these guys, from those weapons. But you've also got the nice sort of middle ground of these guys should do, you know, 2 damage essentially with their attacks, which is really good, because like I said, compare them to the Dreadscythes, they don't need to roll a 6 to do that or anything, you know, to wound. They're just doing that on their normal attacks, which is great. Okay, so now looking into their abilities, so they can fly, of course, like the rest of Nighthaunt. They feel like the rest of Nighthaunt. I've already talked about why those 2 things are really good. And then looking at their first unique ability, which is Spell Eaters. So once in each hero phase, if this unit is within 18 inches of an enemy wizard that successfully casts a spell, this unit can attempt to unbind that spell in the same manner as a wizard. If it does so, add 1 to the unbinding roll for every 4 models in this unit. In addition, if this unit unbinds an enemy spell, add 1 to the attack characteristics of this unit's chill daggers until the next hero phase. So like I said, this attack is really good, but the only shame it was only 1 attack each for the chill daggers. If you do this, you're getting 2 attacks each. Of course you need to unbind that spell, but that's why, like I sort of hinted at earlier, it's a good idea to take a big unit of these guys to really get those pluses to unbind. You know, if you take a unit of 12, which is the max you can take, they are then going to get +3 to unbinding. So that is really, really good and strong there. You know, they're unbinding just as well as Nagash essentially at that point. So the second part of this ability, which is once in each of your hero phases, if this unit is within 6 inches of an endless spell, this unit can attempt to dispel the endless spell in the same manner as a wizard. If this unit dispels an endless spell, it suffers a D3 mortal wounds. However, add 1 to the attack characteristic of this unit's chill daggers until your next hero phase. Right, so what I first thought when I read this is you've only got, you know, 1 wound here for your guys. You know, they have, you know, they're not multi-wound models. They only come in max sizes of, you know, 12 in a unit. Why the hell would you want to sacrifice D3 models? Bear in mind, each model is making 1, potentially 2 attacks just to generate 1 extra attack for the ones that remain. It really doesn't seem logical for me, especially, you know, if you have to think about Battle Shock later and stuff that comes into it. yeah, I really didn't understand this. However, something that I've, obviously realised and clicked is that you do this in the hero phase, and if you're lucky, you can always sort of pair it with the other ability to get an attack from that. So if you do that, and then obviously it depends on if there are endless spells on the board, because obviously if there is none endless spells, and there's not going to be endless spells, then this ability doesn't come into it. But let's say they are, and let's say these guys unbind a spell, and then they unbind an endless spell. Sure, they're taking D3 mortal wounds, but they're making 2 extra attacks each for every model in the unit. So that means they're making 3 attacks each with 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -2 rend, and D3 damage. And like I say, that's 3 attacks each if they tick all these boxes, which is huge. And then when I said that, yes, but you're going to take D3 mortal wounds, what's the point? This is when it comes into it, because you're going to do that in the hero phase, and then you have also got mechanics within the army to bring back summonable models, which these guys are, in your hero phase, so you can replenish the unit before it even goes into another phase. All that's happened is it's got an extra 2 attacks, which is absolutely fantastic. Like I say, if you manage to tick off those boxes, which can really make this unit from what it was it was an alright unit, just standard stats, a 4 to hit, a 3 to wound, a -2 rend, and D3 damage is really good, but unfortunately only 1 attack and also 1 inch range. However, plus with this, when it becomes 3 attacks instead of 1, it becomes super powerful and great at clearing hordes and also elite units, because it's got that -2 rend that really punch through some of the toughest armor out there. So yes, I think that's great. And like I said, yeah, you take more wounds, but then you just summon them back, so you haven't lost anything. Particularly, maybe you just lost, I don't know, a spell because you cast it to summon some models back, but it was a good trade-off. Right, so then looking at the keywords, so they've got Death, Malignant, Nighthaunt, Summonable, and then Myrmourn Banshees. So like I've seen before, and then the most important thing are Nighthaunt and Summonable in particular for the reason I just mentioned. So, and then looking to see what are they going to cost you, how many points these kind of going to be, or ladies shall I say, as they are Banshees. So the first thing to mention is that they are not going to be battle line. They obviously are not monsters either, and then of course they're neither going to be heroes as well. So minimum size unit you can take these guys is 4. Maximum size, like I've already said, is 12. If you take 4, it's going to cost you 80 points. If you take 12, it's going to cost you 210 points. So thinking about it that way, think about the Mass Legion discount, which is, it's only going to be a Mass Legion discount of 30 points. However, that's not particularly bad. I mean, when I say it's not particularly bad, I mean it's not the best discount you can get, but it's a discount. It could be a discount of 20 points, couldn't it? So 30 points isn't too bad. And then, like I said, you're getting discounts, so you can't complain. I think 4 for 80 points it's situational. I think based off their stats, I would say not worth it. However, if you pair it with them unbinding, just normal spells, also endless spells, I think they become worth it. And I think they become worth it if you take the max size unit of them. So you take a unit of 12 of them, or even if you just take a unit of 8, but 12, then you get the discount, don't you? So it's a bit more tempting. So yes, I think that is the way to go forward. These guys, the minimum size units, I mean, there might be a use, but when I say I wouldn't take minimum size units, I'm talking about in big 2,000 point games, so I think a max size unit of these guys could be really good, and it could just be really good to try out as well. So even if you don't have the models, you could even proxy them if you want to, and just see, this is a bit of a risky strategy, because if I want to go for this, I'm going to have to buy 3 boxes of these 4 models that, isn't the most expensive, but, it costs money, doesn't it, at the end of the day. So see how it works. If it works well for you, then that's great, and it'd be great to hear that as well, because I just feel it would be quite an interesting thing to try out. I know Twin Coot, who is another YouTuber, he's got a Nighthaunt army, and he did try this out, how he used to sacrifice them to unbind and the spells, and then to give them the extra attack that way, and then you just send them into things, and they would be absolutely horrendous. And they would be, glass cannons, because they've only got 1 wound and stuff. However, because of the field keyword, because they've got a 4-up save, because they're summonable, you can really sort of make them into a more of a grindy unit than you would have first have thought. So they are definitely a big place in the army for me. I think they're one of the biggest heavy hitters you've got in the army. Obviously Grimghast Reapers are really good and so on, but I think Myrmourn Banshees, that can sometimes be overlooked, can definitely have a place in some army lists. Now, moving on to our last army unit within the army, we are going to look at the Chainghasts. So these are a little bit different, and when I say that, it's because they're quite an elite unit. They've got 2 wounds each. There's quite, big infantry, shall we say, and they do come in units of 2, so they're quite a minimum size unit, half the size of, I have to say, again, like a lot of the Nighthaunt stuff, so it might be a bit of a theme here, but I do really like the models as well. I think they're really nice. I'm a fan of the Spirit Torment, which is like the hero version, and I really like this sort of, I think it's quite unique, sort of a locked face they have, and then they also have, obviously the cloak, which is obviously part of the Nighthaunt theme. But then they're, winging these chains and locks. I think it's like quite a cool aesthetic that's quite new and quite fresh. Really, I think is quite a cool aesthetic. So, who are the Chainghasts in the lore? So they are encased within their iron harness. It is a Chainghast fate to remain imprisoned internally, enthralled to spirit torments. They carry emotional burdens, gas flails, heavy bludgeoning weights that cast bolts of pure misery when swung. So they are, as I've just said, they are bound to the spirit torments. They're sort of, his servants. And what Nagash has obviously done here is that these are souls that when they died, they had so much, sadness and emotion and depression within them. Nagash has trapped that and locked them inside them. So when they go onto the battlefield in this new image, how they has reformed them, they can unleash this, emotional burden upon the enemy in every single energy that comes from every single swing of their weapons. So it's quite a cool way there. That's what I said. Also, throughout this army, is that what I like is that it's not just, your typical army where it's like, well, our weapons are, like steel and this sword goes through you and it stabs you and you die of, blood loss, that sort of thing. This, on the other hand, it's like, it's using emotions to target the enemy. It's using sadness, using depression. It's using this, these spirits, when they died, they had such an, emotional baggage that Nagash has actually weaponized it, which I think is a really quite unique and cool thing to see here. And it's nice to see, how it's being put into the Chainghasts as well. Right, and then looking at their rules, they've got a 6-inch movement, so not as fast as few of the units we've looked at here, but 6-inch movement still respectable, especially as I say, their minimum size unit of 2 here for these guys. And of course they've got the fly ability, so that's going to make their 6-inch movement that much more further. Essentially, it's going to make them a lot easier to move around. Like I say, they come in minimum size units of 2, so it's not going to be particularly hard for them. They've got a 4+ save, yep, great, standard throughout most of the army. They've got a 10+ bravery, fantastic, and they've got 2 wounds, so that's nice. Especially if they're, like I say, minimum size unit is 2. It's nice that they are a bit more beefy, a bit more bulky, essentially. As, like I've said, 1 wound is fine. However, for these guys, 2 wounds, you really sort of need it. Otherwise, you've got a minimum size unit of 2 models, and that's a total of 2 wounds. Yeah, not so great. Right, so 2 wounds is fantastic. They're moving on to their weapons, and this is the first missile weapon we're looking at for the Nighthaunt in this video so far. So what is the missile weapon? It is the Ghast Flails, and this has got a 15-inch range. It's got D3 attacks. It's got a 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -2 rend, 1 damage. So for me, 15-inch range is really good. It's great. It's a huge range actually, especially compared to what other shooting there is in the army. It's got a 4+ to hit, good. A 3+ to wound, great. A -2 rend, fantastic. 1 damage. It's a little bit of a letdown, especially how the attack characteristic is D3, so that is quite swingy. Yes, it's great if you get 3 attacks, but if you get 1, it's a little bit... You're probably going to get the damage through because you've got -2 rend, however, it's only damage 1. I would love to have seen these guys get, 2 damage for their, their damage characteristic for the Ghast Flails, Would have been really nice to see here. You know, D3 even would be awesome. But one as it is, I'm just appreciated that there is a shooting attack for this unit, as that is something that Death does generally miss out on. Right, then moving on to the melee weapons that are surprisingly also called the Ghast Flails. So this has got a 2-inch range, and then it's got a See Below ability. So we're going to look at that now, and that is talking about the sweeping blows. So it's talking about the attack characteristic of the Ghast Flails. A melee weapon is equal to the number of enemy models within 2 inch of the attacking model when the number of attacks made with the weapon is determined. So automatically straight off the bat, this is going to be better against hordes. You know, obviously against elite units it's going to get less attacks, you know, maybe even just 1 attack. And the attack characteristic is hitting on a 4, wounding on a 3, -1 rend, 1 damage. Yeah, I think it would be nice to see 2 damage here, especially going against elite choices, you know, things that you could be fighting in elite armies. However, against hordes, you know, within 2-inch range of these guys, it's not bad. You could quite easily, I see you guys get, you know, like 4 attacks each for them. And like I said, hitting on a 4 is good, wounded on a 3, like seen quite a bit in this army so far. It's great. -1 rend, it's good as well, and 1 damage. I just feel like it's a little bit of a, it doesn't wow me. I'm afraid to say that it is cool that this is like an anti-horde unit, but I think we've already sort of got that covered in the army. We've got things that can deal with that already. But it is nice that these guys are tailored to do that job. So looking at their abilities now, so we just talked about one, but looking at the other ones, they've got the fly ability, so that's great, and that's also, you know, like I said, got the same as the rest of the army, and that's the same as the Ethereal as well, so fantastic. And then they've got the other ability, which is an other link in the chain. So while this unit is wholly within 12 inches of a friendly spirit torment, you can re-roll hit rolls of 1 for friendly Nighthaunt units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So this ties into the spirit torment, which we're going to talk about in the Nighthaunt part 2 army video. So it will come into more importance when we talk about that. However, what essentially it's going to do is allow your friendly units wholly within 12 inches re-rolling once a hit, which is really good in general. Like we've already mentioned on that note, as I mentioned with the Bladegheist Revenants, as they will, if they're wholly within 12 inches of Chainghasts, they'll re-roll all failed hit rolls. So there's already synergy we can see going on there between those 2 units. And the only problem I can see is wholly within 12 inches. Yeah, that is a common theme we're seeing, especially with the new armies, which is good for some ways as it stops some units daisy chaining across the battlefield. However, wholly within 12 inches, I think what that really means is that you're only going to really get 1 unit within 12 inches of this, you know, 1 decent sized unit within 12 inches, or maybe 2 if you're lucky. So with that to bear in mind, but you know, with this another link in the chain, you are re-rolling failed hit rolls of 1. So if you're only doing it for 1 of the units, it's still going to be a big factor, especially if you do it for, like I said, Bladegheist Revenants, then they re-roll and everything. You know, Grimghast Reapers is going to work well for them, and the other things it will do. But also just things like Spirit Hosts, because you know they're doing mortal wounds on 6s, they're hitting on 5s. So if you're not getting the mortal wounds through, you're not probably going to get many 5s either. And that's the really sort of swingy thing about the Spirit Hosts. They either do great mortal wounds or nothing. With these guys, you're making them re-roll all the failed 1s, aren't you? So it's more chance of getting mortal wounds. So it's a good pairing, you know, to have Chainghasts or the Spirit Torment with the Spirit Host. I thought would be quite an interesting thing to do. So those are the Chainghasts. We'll look at their keywords. So they've got the Death, Malignant, Nighthaunt, Sunbull, and Chainghast. So like I've been saying throughout this video, Nighthaunt is the most important thing, as obviously it is a Nighthaunt army. But Sunbull is very important here as well, because this is going to be a unit that you can bring back to life, or models within the unit to be more precise. So talking about the units, what are they like in the game? So they are obviously, they're not going to be a battle line option. They are not going to be your leaders as well. And they're obviously not monsters or artillery. So they're going to fall within the other unit bracket, like we've seen with the last few units. So these guys don't come in big sizes. The minimum size is 2, the maximum size is 4, and they're going to cost you 80 points for 2. So if you want the maximum size unit, which is 4, it's going to cost you 160 points. I feel like these guys might be good, you know, like the other link in the chain ability might be a good synergy to try and buff your army best you can and try to make the Spirit Torment ability as a wide bubble as you can, essentially. But for the attacks, I like the shooting attack. It would be nice if it was 2 damage, but the other characteristics are good. In combat, they're great against Horde. So again, if you know what army you're fighting, it's a Horde army. Fantastic. These guys with the Dreadscythe, because if it's a Horde army, chances are their Bravy's not going to be that good. Could be a good pairing. And then I think for most other things, I think you've got other things in this army that can do their job, to be honest. But I do like the variety they bring. Like I say, I do like the models as well, because that's going to affect my opinion on these guys. But I like it that they've got a shooting attack, which might be really important for taking out Pacific. Even if it's not, you know, heroes, the enemy's got, you know, just unmounted heroes because of the lookout sir ability now. But even if it is just shooting that mounted hero they've got behind their battle line, because 15-inch range is pretty good, or just taking out, you know, artillery pieces and so on, could be really useful there. So I think these guys, I'd probably, like, if I was doing the army, I would get them because I love the models so much, and I'd try and fill them and really get experience with them to see where they fit in within the army. So with that unit, guys, that is our last unit in the army for this video. Of course, I will be talking about all the other units, you know, being the heroes and being the monsters of the army, which is actually going to probably be just as long as this video, almost, because they are a crazy amount of heroes in the Nighthaunt army. Even though they are quite small ones, it's still going to be important talking about them, and I'll try and put up that video as soon as I can. Hopefully by the end of this week I'll have that video up there. That's the plan. And what I want to say of this video, this is the first time really diving into the war scrolls of the units of the Nighthaunt, and to be honest, I found them really quite interesting. It's also been interesting diving into their lore a bit, finding out, you know, they're not all just the same spooky ghosts. There are actually quite a bit of difference between them and how they came to be, and, you know, Nagash's cruel punishment he's bestowed upon each one of them, which I think is a really interesting and appealing factor of this army, is that every single member within the Nighthaunt has got a story to tell. You know, they didn't always used to be, you know, as foreseen, these sinister spirits across the battlefield and across, you know, like the dark places of the mortal realms. They did used to be, you know, either creatures of good, or they did, you know, try and save people's lives, and really the complete opposite of what they are now in death. But that is Nagash's justice, and Nagash's justice is supreme, so he knows what's best, so he's put them all to good work. So I like that. And then in the game, I would say the army can be quite swingy, and when I say that, I mean mainly things talking about like spirit hosts and Hexwraiths and, you know, the Dreadscythes. They all have, you know, like abilities that target on rolls of 6, and I think, like I say, they can be swingy, but when you get it off, it's going to be pretty devastating, especially with the spirit hosts. If you get lucky with those dice of spirit hosts, they can really, if not wipe out enemy units, certainly destroy them pretty much to the point where they can't do much back at you, which is big. I'd say it's quite, this army, it feels quite risk reward. As I say, they're quite swingy, and some of them, like the Myrmourn Banshees, can sacrifice themselves to try and get extra attacks in the right situation. However, the risk of this army is sort of negated a little bit, because, you know, you've got the chance of summoning back those models, which is really quite nice, and I would say unique, but you've sort of got that in quite a few of the other death armies, and there's some other armies that have got it as well, but really fits in with the Nighthaunt, I personally think. I think this is an army that hits really hard. It's got great movability. It's an army that is also, just talking about on the hobby side, it's an army that if you want to have a 2,000 point army on the board and you don't have much time to build or paint, or you're new to the hobby in particular, it's an army that if you want to, you could get painted up to like tabletop standard pretty goddamn easily, with lots of washes that have came out for the army, so lots of shades and stuff like that. I personally paint mine a bit differently, and like takes a little bit longer, as basically I like painting things different to how they are in the box. However, that's the other point with this army, is that if you know, you want to put in the time, and so you can really come up with some really nice and interesting and different paint schemes to them, which, you know, would be lovely to see. So that's the army. For this, of course, that's not the whole army. This is why this is part 1 of the video, and like I said, I go into the rest of the army in part 2. But as you can see how long this video has gone on for, and I have done this video over 3 nights, because like I said in a previous video, unfortunately, work has been a bit of a pain and has made me leave quite late every single shift. So unfortunately, I couldn't get it all done in one night and get up for you guys within that, you know, that 1 week of the Nighthaunt week that I had going. So unfortunately, it's been a little bit longer, but I have got it done, and I hope you guys enjoy this video, which is the most important thing. And what I will also add, which I have mentioned as well, is that if you do not agree with me in some of the things that I've said in this video, please let me know down in the comments. As I said, I haven't, like, you know, as if fielded like a 2,000 point army of Nighthaunt at all. So this is a lot of what I've been saying is just looking at the war scrolls and just thinking how they could be used. So if you guys got good experience, or you've got good ideas, please let me know down in the comments. And like I said, not just for my benefit, but also for other people that think about getting into Nighthaunt. I'll read the comments. It's really going to help them out. And like I've said before, you know, more people get into Nighthaunt is technically more people get into Death, and Games Workshop will maybe see that and maybe think, oh well, Death's quite popular, let's you know, expand the ranges, which Nighthaunt has been a big expansion for Death, and Death has had Legions, Gash, Battle Time, so I'm not saying they're missing out, but it's always nice to have more Death models, isn't it? So it doesn't hurt. Right, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know down in the comments your thoughts about the video, and in particular, you know, what units you like. And also, as this is the part of the new series I'm doing, which is a lore video for every army, and then which was going to be an army video for every army. However, judging by how long this army video has gone on for, some armies might have a lore video and 2 army videos, instead of making like 1 3-hour long army video, which I think is going to be too long in my personal opinion. If you don't, let me know, but I think definitely like 2 like hour to 1 hour videos will be better to go through the armies of the different races of the mortal realms within Age of Sigmar. And let me know what armies you would like to see me do in the future, as this will purely be on your request, what armies you'd like to see me make. I know I've got one which I plan to do with Legions of Blood next, because like I've mentioned in a previous video, that was suggested to me, so I'll be getting that done after that. And then if I get no more suggestions for what to do after that, I am looking into doing a Seraphon army, so I will look to do some Seraphon videos. So that is the sort of plan for this series at the moment as it stands, obviously subject to change, but we'll see how we get on. Right, okay, so that's enough rambling from me. Like I say, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like, subscribe and comment down below, as that helps me in more ways than I can possibly explain, for me to try and make as many videos as I can. And like I say, guys, thank you very much for watching this video, and until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.